I'd like to call us to order. Welcome, everybody. We're glad to be back in Poulsbo. Last time when we met on Bainbridge, I asked the question of our board, what is a favorite memory you have from Bainbridge, or a favorite restaurant that you like to go to, or a favorite experience that you like to do there? And so I'd like to do the same with Poulsbo today. So we'll go up and down the row here, but favorite place you like to eat in Poulsbo, favorite memory you have in Poulsbo, or what you like about Poulsbo, basically. Who wants to start us?
Now we're lit. Okay. Of course, closer. I can't get this one to turn on, so if you have magic, you want to do that one. Favorite place to eat, of course, is More Ice Creamery, because I'm a ice cream person. But best memories, my husband and I have spent many hours sitting on the benches reading books together in the sun.
For me, I guess the best memory when my kids were little are going to the fireworks, but unfortunately it's so crowded now. I haven't been in several years, but the old fireworks shows were great.
Oh, thank you. So, my best memory is not about places to eat or things that I've done, but about two people that I met years ago, Mayor of Poulsbo and one of the city council people, Tom Settle, and almost said Nick Revenich, but he was from Port Orchard. But they've had some great political leaders from the city of Poulsbo that have not only had a lot of vision for the city, but have participated in various kinds of forums that guide growth in the county. So I just want to say thank you to Poulsbo.
I live here, and so I grew up in a little town in called Welcome, Minnesota. 800 people lived on a farm outside of that. Multiple generations. The farm's been in the family for 125 years. And so when I moved out here, it was the first time that I came back to a smaller town. I had moved to Chicago, I had moved to LA, I had moved out to a large city on the East Coast. And coming back to Poulsbo, what I love about it is going into a coffee shop, I see people who I know. Going into Central Market, I see people who I know. Just walking around town, you see people who you know. So I love the community.
Mine is also not of a restaurant. My good memory is I've only ever been to one Husky game by boat, and several years ago, quite a few years ago now, we had a social event. I'm a Naval Academy graduate, and the Navy alumni decided to take a boat trip over to see a Husky game. The Huskies were not playing Navy, but we were going, like I say, as a social event. And I remember the party started down here on the waterfront on the boat about an hour and a half before the boat ever got underway. And so I remember that as a great boat ride and a great afternoon and a somewhat blurry ride back to Poulsbo after the Husky game.
Mike?
Yeah, I also, there we go. I also lived in Poulsbo for 6.5 years, right down on the waterfront opposite the city downtown. So when they had the fireworks show, they literally had it practically on my front porch. And that's when I found out how popular I was, because when they started lining up for the show, there were 50 or 60 people that I'd never seen before came down and sat down on my breakwater in front of my property and said, "Oh, we've been doing this for years." So I had all these new friends on my seawall and on my front lawn to enjoy the fireworks show. But the other thing I enjoyed about being in Poulsbo at that time, that property had been in the family of a Norwegian couple for like 40 years, and that fellow had sieved all of the rocks out of the earth and added a bunch of lake earth to that ground. And when we turned it up in order to put our garden in, the rototiller put his implement down into the, it was grass covered at that time, and it just sunk right down into the grass, down a foot. It was black dirt a foot deep, and here it was about 60 or 70 feet from the water, and it was the most beautiful garden dirt I'd ever seen in my life. And my wife and I loved that property, but we were renters and could never buy it.
All right, on to the approval of minutes.
Darren, I just wanted to say something. There was a couple of comments made to me in the past couple of weeks about the question that you ask at the beginning of every meeting. And what I explained to the folks, because they didn't realize that how this enables us to get to know each other a lot better. We meet, well, now we meet twice a month, but I know over the past year, since I've been a board member, that these questions are really give me a better understanding of each other, where they're coming from and what they've done. And I just want you to know I appreciate the fact that you do that, because it's been helpful with me. And I think the audience should know why we're doing this, because it's really helpful for us to work as a body together once we get to know each other better.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, the intention is to allow us to really build trust amongst the board, to get to know each other. I think it makes the rest of our conversations, we have more ears to listen to each other the more we know each other. And so that's the intention behind it. And it's just fun to get to know each other. So that's good too.
Thank you.
Approval of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? And are there any comments on the minutes?
I had one small comment on
Okay.
number 4, ongoing business, part A. Just the last sentence, you said Rick Smith, and we should capitalize his last name.
Also on that one too, for me, at the beginning, it says my description of the meeting with the county commissioners, and I would just describe it as a good first step, is how I'd like that to be recorded.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good first step, and they did take our information well, and said they were going to consider their position.
So,
I'll move
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes as amended and corrected.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Minutes have passed. Do we have the sign-up sheet?
Bill.
Bill did. Thank you. Our first speaker tonight that we'd like to welcome up is Tom Goodland from Bainbridge Island. And just to remind you, for all the people who are planning to speak tonight, we cut you off at 3 minutes. We appreciate the public interest and the public comment, and we appreciate you coming out to share with us. But we also have a 3-minute limit just for purposes of timeliness with our meetings. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much. I spoke briefly at the last public meeting and went through the the various criteria in the ways that I see that the Bainbridge Island Park District Aquatic Center proposal meets your 4 criteria. So this is just those notes on how that how the project I see meeting your criteria, and I'm not going to go through it again, but I wanted to get to the summary and then just talk a little bit about a proposal I have for you. So I think very clearly going through these items and the criteria you put out that the pool proposal ranks very highly on your various criteria. The location, as I pointed out, falls within your one of your preferred geographic locations or regions. And I wanted to say that at this point, the 50-meter pool is unlikely to occur without your assistance. It really needs your support to move it along. And on the last page is a marked up copy of the March 25th proposal, the oral proposal to you. And it just marked up this pre-design, the phase 2, which was proposed at a $500,000 cost to do a series of studies that would advance the project. And so my request is that you consider this project, because I do think it ranks really highly. You did last December fund a similar amount to the Circuit of the Northwest to do their studies, and it did advance their project. I could see you considering a motion in which you did the same thing for this project. And one of the great advantages to you would be that then the pool project would be in a place, be ready to move if you find yourselves in a position to fund another project. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is Mark Shorn, representing the Port Campbell Forest. Welcome, Mark.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thank you guys for all the work you've put in on this process. It's been long and arduous, and I can certainly appreciate that. I'm the chair of the Port Campbell Stewardship Committee, and I was past vice president of the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance and North Kitsap Trails, and also the fundraising committee to purchase the property and turn it into a park. Our goal when we purchased the property, or tried to raise money to purchase the property, was to create this regional park that became this mecca that would attract people from Seattle all over to the North Kitsap to create a economic stimulus for the North Kitsap. That included a Sound Olympics trail, which I think Lynn will talk later about, that would connect the Olympic Peninsula to Seattle, and a cross-state trail and a cross-country trail, as well as a ride park. We purchased the land. The park has been extremely busy and popular, well-used, so we're on our way there. We're working on the ride park, but we really need some funding at this point to bring us up to the next level. So I appreciate any help we can get. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Matt Slaney, Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance.
Hi there. Thanks again for being here. We all recognize that this park proposal was not on your agenda for tonight, so I appreciate the time to talk to this. Just wanted to let you know that what Mark was just relaying about how the economic stimulus and the mountain bike mecca, we'll start with, we got a festival. September 27th, September 28th. We got a big festival coming on. Part of that mecca, part of that recreation mecca is happening. We do this. We'll have at least 500 people there. Big festival. Come out. It's a good time. Just wanted to let you know that, show you that we are organized. Is there anybody here that thinks this ride park is going to be beneficial for the community? Yeah. Come on. Anybody? Is there anybody here that's willing to donate their time and volunteer their efforts to make this happen? We'll do our part. We just need some help. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Lynn Shorn, representing Port Campbell Forest Park. you.
So you all have heard us cheering and ranting and raving. Just want to fill you in on what's happened since you all last met. The Rails to Trails meeting happened. That's a cross-nation trail, and we've been approved for the northern route crossing the Port Gamble Forest Park called the Sound to Olympics Trail. So the feasibility study has already been done for the Sound to Olympics Trail. That was paid for by Kitsap County, and along with the Sound to Olympics Trail is its association to the Mountain Bike Ride Park, which is just adjacent to it and would share parking lot, facility, bathroom facility, et cetera, et cetera. So the paper that I gave you is also the Cross Washington State Trail. So the northern route, you can see, goes all the way to the ocean, but it has to go from Kingston Ferry or Bainbridge Ferry to the Hood Canal Bridge. The Clallam County and Jefferson County are definitely doing their part, called the Olympic Discovery Trail. So as far as economic benefit, rails to trails, people bicycling, alternative ways of transportation across the nation. I don't know if you all have been aware of so many more bike packers, people traveling by bicycle for longer distances, but it's evident in all over Kitsap County as people are going across Washington State on their bikes. So I'm here to give the rah, rah, rah for the Sound to Olympics Trail. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next is Becky Erickson, representing the City of Poulsbo. Welcome, Becky.
I'm here as mayor of the City of Poulsbo, and first of all, I'm pitch hitting because my staff has, Mary is out with the Parks and Rec group tonight, and Carla is taking a much needed vacation, so I'm here in their stead. First of all, I want to say thank you to the board that's been working very hard, and thank you, Mike, for all the hard work. I know it's been a long journey, and I think it's going to be a little while more before we get to the end. Couple things. You folks sent us an ILA, and it is with our attorney, and it's under review for several things. We have an existing ILA with the Public Facilities District. So we're looking at the new ILA and the old ILA, and then we're trying to put these pieces together. So we do have it, and I want to thank you for forwarding that to us. And so that's the second thing I'd like to say. The third thing is that the City of Poulsbo's ask is a phased ask. And I think all of the projects should really think about that kind of an ask, because we in the City of Poulsbo have been doing grants for many years, and we've been doing it very successfully. And one of the things that we have learned is you take a little bit of money up front, and you do a series of due diligence steps. And one of the most important due diligence steps that you take is the public outreach portion. So everybody knows what you're doing with their money. And our ask for that piece is about $400,000, and this is for the Poulsbo Event and Recreation Center. Then the second ask, the second phase, is to actually make it real. Now, what does that mean, make it real? That means you get the consultants, the architects, the design engineers, everyone together to actually design really what you're going to do so that it's shovel ready. It's ready to go. Now, why do you always want to be shovel ready? And I mean truly shovel ready, all the way through the state, and if necessary, the federal environmental process, through all of your criteria to actually build something, whether it be a trail, a park, whatever it is. You have a whole series of criteria you have to get through. So you get through that point, and then you're ready. You're ready for public facility dollars, you're ready for federal dollars, you're ready for state dollars, you're ready for local dollars You're ready for dollars from many different sources. And these are pretty large projects. Not one source is going to pay for all of it, okay? So please, all of you, think about phased asks. And I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk to you specifically what that means, but that's the way grants work, okay? Thank you very much.
Sure, you didn't use all your time. Come forward. Again, this is Matt Slaney of Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance.
Ms. Erickson, thank you for that. The ride park of this bigger thing is a phase one. All those things, get this ready, get this ready. I was sitting there checking boxes as you were talking. Done, done. We have one permit left, and it's 3/4 of the way through. Then we are shovel ready.
Thank you. Connie Record, representing Port Gamble.
Thank you very much. Won't take but a minute of time. I just want to build on exactly what the previous speakers had said. The Port Gamble project does involve a phased project, and one of the very first things that we've put in front of you is precisely what I think you are considering now, and that is a master plan, a feasibility study. Tell us precisely what this project is going to mean. And this project does involve a ride park. It involves the STO, there's parking, there's connector trails, there's shoreline access. But all of that, those are but components of the larger plan. This is a 3,500 acre parcel and something that is so unique at a county level to be planning for. It's just a tremendous opportunity. And it will the master plan will put in place a structure and a phase for, again, doling out money or effort or volunteers or additional work that can be done over time. So this is exactly the kind of project. The other part of it is incorporated with the master plan is a feasibility study that really will inform us what kind of development, what level of development is appropriate there in terms of rustic camping, maybe cabins, maybe something as expansive as an environmental learning center, that sort of thing. And it will inform us what is going to be reasonably and logically put at this site and exactly what it's going to cost. So I just wanted to make a case for this also being a phased project, and I applaud you for considering the feasibility study component of this and the other projects early in the game. It will really give you the information you need to allow each of these projects to move forward on their own pace. So,
may I ask her a question? I'm not sure you're the right one to ask because several speakers have been proponents of the project. Several weeks ago, there was an article in the Kitsap Sun where two groups are sort of arm wrestling over whether the trails to be built should be asphalt trails and meet federal standards for width and all of that, or they should be more natural trails. Is any of that part of your project? Or
it is not, no.
Different piece of land?
Correct. It's a different piece of land. The controversial project is the North Kitsap, North Heritage Park, which ultimately does connect into this, but it's quite a distance away. And it is a more challenging site, I will say that. That's why the controversy is nobody can quite figure out exactly where a paved trail would go on that site. The Port Gamble Forest site is not that. The feasibility study for the trail has been done. It's very appropriate. It is also going to be a 10 or 12 foot wide paved trail, and it fits on this site. So it is a different site.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Last, we have Jerry McDonald representing Circuit of the Northwest.
Good evening. My name's Jerry McDonald. You have spent approximately $550,000 on the feasibility study and design and engineering for the Circuit of the Northwest. They're ready for the next step. The public side of the Circuit of the Northwest Event Center will have a substantial benefits to the community. It will host 4 more sanctioned races each year, outdoor concerts, wine and beer festivals, music events, MX PacWest racing, and last but not least, the regional EVAC emergency vehicle operations training for law enforcement and fire, and that's pretty important. Here's a rough estimate of what the 4 sanctioned races mean to the community in dollars. The feasibility study predicted 18,769 attendees per race per day, and assuming each race will have, each race fan will spend about $135 for tickets, parking, catering, concessions on each of the 3 days for each race. For all 4 races, that's $30,405,780 into our local economy. The Kitsap County 9% taxes would be $2,736,520. Kitsap Public Facilities District would receive $90,305. The Port of Bremerton will receive 5% of the gross gross profits for all events, not only the races. And just for the race alone, that'll be $1,520,289,000. Amazon recently contacted Circuit of the Northwest about the use of the existing track for feasibility researching vehicles interacting with products starting the second week of September. This is from Alexa Automotive / Safety Department, and I think we can think about artificial intelligence with this. This Amazon inquiry is just an indication of what could and will happen as the Circuit of the Northwest evolves. The public side of this project will combine with the private side to enhance our local high schools and Olympic colleges' STEM programs. The STEM Center will become a technology generator for community partners. In summary, the Circuit of the Northwest has passed all of its tests. They could be ready to start construction within the next few weeks and be finished within a year or year and a half. I know a couple of you feel that the Circuit of the Northwest does not deserve any funding because the track's a rich man's sport. This is a very narrow view and overlooks all of the community benefits. Many of your other projects will take at least a year to a year and a half to get where the Circuit of the Northwest is now. Please be sensible and fund the Circuit of the Northwest public side now. You have the money and you could start soon. Taxes paid for these events will definitely help all of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you to all of you for coming forward and sharing with us. We appreciate it. We're moving now to item 4 on our agenda, the financial reports. Mike, will you walk us through this?
Let me get turned on here so that it'll get properly recorded. If you look at the top sheet of the financial, it gives a little summary on the yellow box down in the right-hand corner, which shows that the receipts from the sales tax rebate for the month of July was $150,400. That was up 2.4% over last year. Still positive, but not as much as the month before, where it was 9%. So if you look at the first 7 months of the year, that percentage has been yo-yoing all year. So it certainly shows some of the things we hear in the news about some uncertainty, about different economic conditions. Some of this was weather-related when we had a significant impact from February sales being down, which would have showed up in April. But we are still positive and growing from last year overall, but showing some fluctuations in the results. As usual, our debt service was around $70,000 to pay off the existing bonds. So the net was around $80,000. Our expenses for the month of July were higher, almost $25,000. And so the net to cash was a little over $55,000 that went into the 977 account.
What was the bulk of the 25,000 expense?
There were a couple. One, obviously, our legal expenses have been higher, and because of a lot of the work that was going on at that time, the legal expenses in the month of July was $7,100 plus. Also, a higher expense that hadn't been on our expense sheet before was the stipend for the directors. That was an additional $3,300 that we had not had an expense for before. And the other component is you had approved earlier in the year my ability to draw overtime. So my expenses for salary and benefits were higher than they had been earlier in the year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for B, the blanket voucher, Mike, anything to say for that?
Yeah, the next item is the blanket voucher, and you have in your signatures packet, in addition to the signature page for my salary, there is the blanket voucher, and the legal services were a little lower, but so that voucher is for $3,200.52.
Can I have a motion for approval of that?
I'll make a motion to approve the blanket voucher for $3,200.52.
And I have a question.
Yeah, second, first?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
The legal services at 2,500, this something over 7,000 you mentioned, that was the previous month?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Would have been higher, but our attorney was on vacation for a good part of that month. But he still did the work on the ILAs that we'll be talking about tonight.
Any other questions or comment? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion has been passed. We'll move now to item 5, ongoing business, bonding and financing information. Mike, would you speak to this?
Yeah, at the last meeting, after Alan had presented his information about the different scenarios with the kind of minimum and maximum amount of bonding that we may have the opportunity to do, you'd ask a question that said, how much was the total amount of money that was going to be collected over that period of time to be available, that to pay back the bonds that we might sell, either by ourselves or through the county, and what in excess there might be. So in your packets was a copy of what Alan had prepared showing the sales tax revenue, our operating expenses, what the current debt service would be through 2025, and then the final column on the right-hand side, available for allocation to projects in whatever form, either as a debt service for bonds payment or free and clear over and above the outstanding debt service that we have through 2025 to where that's paid off. So that total amount of money over that period of time is estimated at something in excess of $47 million. That's nice to hear because in the first 15 years of our experience, we haven't come close to that amount of money, but it shows what the compounding of the economy will do when things are going well. We had a recession in the middle of that, which took some of the wind out of the sails. But the other interesting thing was in looking at this eye chart spreadsheet that I'd provided to you before, the kind of numbers over in the last 3 columns kind of match up with that. So our own estimates and our calculations about what we think is the amount of money that's going to be available are in the same ballpark as with our financial advisors, so that's a good thing. And again, that number's something in the $40 to $45 million range.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to number 6, 6A, the Port Orchard Event Center status. We want to invite Mayor Putansu to come forward and share with us.
Certainly. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. And to Mayor Erickson's credit, I don't know if you guys have seen, hopefully it came to in your packets also. I provided last week, Mike, an outline and with tasks and phases, or tasks and deliverables, and I'm going to talk to that if I could. Wonderful, in your packets. And I'm not going to go, it's 3 pages, I'm not going to go into it in detail, but this is what Mayor Erickson was alluding to is exactly the path that Port Orchard is traveling and what we've delivered to you. And you can see in that first task is $400,000 for planning, outreach, and cost estimates, hiring a consultant to do architectural engineering services, a needs assessment, gathering information and preparing preliminary reports to inform the design. We have to determine property ownership in that phase, develop design alternatives, develop preferred alternatives, and at the end of that first phase, to check in back with the partners and the electeds to see if it makes sense to move forward after that phase. Next phase is preparing the 60% design, cost estimates, determine operations and maintenance responsibilities, and then after we've taken that second phase completed that, to check back in with the electeds to determine if it is feasible to move forward. Task 3 is property acquisitions. We're estimating $1 million for property acquisitions. Step 4 is permitting. Shoreline permits, ad-ready construction documents, complete application for building permits and off-site improvements. At this moment in time, we've got a community center project, but we also had associated with that a shoreline restoration and a public pier. And we're proposing at this moment in time to separate those 3 projects, separate them into 3 separate projects, because if we lump those together and go to after various grants, the shoreline restoration will compete. It has its own, there's things we can pursue by itself. The city feels it can fund that shoreline restoration. If we lump that in with the community center, it won't compete as well for those dollars. Same way, there's Parks and Recs grants that we can get for public pier, that if we lump that back into the community center. So at that point in time, the city will take on those other tasks and projects and fund them separately. We get to the completion of step 5, and that's where we get to the last installment, which would be the $9.5 million, which would be your contribution to what we're estimating is about a $20 million project. Looking at the timeline, we're looking at 2 to 3 years from needing what we estimate is the final installment of $9.5 million. Heard to date is a desire to fund planning for the top 3 projects, and we have an ILA, as Mayor Erickson alluded to. She has one. As the mayor of the top ranked project, I reached out to Mayor Erickson and Commissioner Gilder and talked to them a little bit about their projects, and I believe that first step the funding, the outreach and the planning works for those projects also. But I'd like to explain why that approach won't work for our project and the importance of providing a funding commitment to Port Orchard for all the tasks that I've outlined. And what makes our situation and project different than the other projects is we have a developer in Sound West Group who has all the property under contract for this $120 million master plan project. The master plan project is contingent on Kitsap Bank, the anchor tenant, signing a development agreement and committing to the project. Kitsap Bank feels strongly that our community center project and the conference space it provides are vital piece to our downtown redevelopment. Our challenge is that Sound West Group has 11 properties under contract, but can't close on those properties without commitments from the bank or the PFD. If those contracts were to expire, I'm afraid our master plan project won't move forward. And I have Wes Larson here this evening. If I could call on him to speak for just a moment on the importance of a commitment to the PFD. Wes?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. What we have in Port Orchard is the opportunity for a truly transformational project. And I mentioned a couple other projects that we've undertaken at Sound West Group that I think would, compare and emphasize, encourage you to trust in ourselves as a developer in our resolute partnership with Kitsap Bank. One of those projects is in Bainbridge Landing, and Bainbridge Landing was a close relationship in cooperation with the city to develop what is a 1-acre park on that site, and largest project in Bainbridge to date. And proud to say that NAIOP, the National Association of Commercial Real Estate, 14,000 members, is named it one of the top projects in the region. So we've been nominated as a finalist for that project. The second project is in downtown Bremerton. Many of you are probably familiar with Marina Square. That's a $130 million project. Again, transformational. It's a partnership between the public and the private sectors in that we're developing the Shoreline together with Port of Bremerton and the tribe. That public participation and engagement in the project is absolutely key to making a project of that scale a successful and truly transformative project. And I'm really proud to say that yesterday that project was named by globestreet.com and National Real Estate Forum as the #1 project for community real estate development in the country. So what we have here is we have ourselves as Sound West Group. We're partnered with the oldest continuously operating bank in Kitsap County in a truly transformative project for downtown Port Orchard. We're asking for the buy-in and commitment, and we're, as Mayor Patansu mentioned, we are very closely and so supportive of Kitsap Bank. We cannot, as a developer, go forward with a project without Kitsap Bank's commitment. Kitsap Bank is looking to continue and operate in Kitsap County, but that part of the project is truly, the anchor or the linchpin to it. So these types of opportunities to develop truly transformative development in a downtown urban center that suffered from decades of blight come along once in a generation, if that. The stars are aligned. We've worked very hard to aggregate 11 properties. Kitsap Bank is engaged. As you all know, they're in the process of determining where their next location is going to be for their corporate campus, and I'll allow Kitsap Bank to speak to that. We as a developer have expended a huge amount of money. We're well into this at $1 million plus, committed towards this process. So, I would implore you to look at the big picture here and consider, a project that, again, maybe once in a generation, but, there's an opportunity here to do something that would be truly and remarkably transformative for Port Orchard. And so we stand behind Kitsap Bank. If the decision is to go forward with this project, we will perform. So I, again, would encourage you to look at this opportunity, and thank you for your time, for listening to us, and with that, I'll turn it back to Rob Pitanza.
West. So our project and the economic impact it will create are exactly why the PFD was created and why the funding was reauthorized by the legislature. We've heard time and time again, it's time for South Kitsap to get a project. We've been ranked the top project, and the second and third projects are both in North Kitsap. The fourth ranked project is located in the city of Bremerton. I believe that the $12 million we've requested is warranted to provide geographic equity. Based on our top ranking, the economic impacts, the number of jobs created, and I believe our project checks all the boxes and receive the requested funding. As a former banker, I understand your funding challenges. Our project is unique in its position with Kitsap Bank as a partner. I've had discussions with Kitsap Bank regarding a role they could play as a lender for our project, and if the project receive a pledge of the revenue equivalent to the final proposed $9.5 million, we could use that as cash flow to support financing for our project. Tony George from Kitsap Bank is here to discuss what that financing alternative could look like and the importance of the community center project to Kitsap Bank and the master plan project. Tony?
Good evening. I'm Tony George. I'm President and Chief Operating Officer at Kitsap Bank. As many of you know, our bank's headquarters has been located within one block of its current location on Bay Street for over 111 years, very close to the community center site. At that time, in that time, we've seen Port Orchard's boom times and recently some of its more challenging times. In the past 23 years that I've worked in downtown Port Orchard, not much has changed. Kitsap Bank, on the other hand, is one of the largest community banks in the state of Washington, and while our branches are largely located on the peninsulas, our lending is throughout western Washington. We continue to grow, but we're bursting at the seams. Our current headquarters building is nearly 50 years old and unable to house all the people that we would like to be located there. We're unable to remodel due to the fact that a good portion of the building that we currently sit on sits on DNR land, and it's not current use. While we love Port Orchard and believe in the greater West Sound's economic potential, the lion's share of it will continue to flow to communities north, south, and east unless we do something to spark interest in Port Orchard. Larry and I, our corporate real estate senior vice president, have watched this PFD process play out for the better part of a year. And while we're very excited that the South Kitsap Community Event Center was selected the #1 project by the board and believe it is perfectly positioned to spearhead future growth in South Kitsap, we believe that it's now time to make the completion of the South Kitsap Community Event Center the #1 priority of the PFD. We have to move forward with urgency. Unless something is decided soon, unless financial commitments are made, Kitsap Bank, and I believe Sound West Group as well, will need to make alternative plans. What we're really looking for is firm commitments for you to fund this #1 project. We can't, Kitsap Bank and our board has made it very clear that we do not want to be putting in a building worth tens of millions of dollars and have it be the only thing in Port Orchard. It just doesn't make sense. Right now there's very few restaurants. We have fewer restaurants in Port Orchard than we did 10 years ago. And so we're not going to be sitting out there. But what we believe the Community Event Center does is multiple things. It provides access for our employees and for the public to the waterfront. It starts a redevelopment along the waterfront that's going to attract other small businesses into the community. And as we bring multifamily in, as proposed, it'll bring even more jobs and potential. I've watched as a financial guy, I've watched numerous entities requesting literally tens of millions of dollars for many great projects, but I'm still a little unclear on the amount of money that we really have available to fund. While we hear numbers like 47 million, that sounds like a lot, the ability to bond is a fraction of that. And it really depends on whether we're going to get the county, the PFD itself, the city of Port Orchard, and how we structure that is really going to make a big difference in the interest rate paid and how long and the terms that are going to be proposed. Kitsap Bank, as a commercial bank and a community bank that invests back in the communities in which it operates, we invest in municipal bonds. We do this every day. We provide direct financing for municipalities. We also buy bonds in the public markets. We have experience, and we could and would be able to assist with securing financing, and would even consider being a buyer investor of any project-specific bond with sufficient revenues to back it. We would stand ready to work with the city, the county, and the PFD to ensure the success of the PFD's bond issuance as it relates to the South Kitsap Community Events Center. I believe, like Wes said, the time is now, the stars are aligned. The South Kitsap Community Events Center is the only project to have the support of the city, the county, and the port, and it's the only project to create transformational change and needed revitalization in one of our downtown cores. The South Kitsap Community Event Center will have immediate economic benefits, not only in helping keep Port Orchard's biggest corporate employer home, but it will also lead to other jobs at the multitude of small businesses that will be attracted to a redeveloped waterfront. I ask that you recognize the monumental impact that this investment could have on the future of Port Orchard and South Kitsap, and the legacy that you as a board can leave in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Bear with me a moment here where I can find my notes here. All right, just about done. So our request for the is for the PFD to immediately commit to funding the proposal that provides a total of $12 million to the South Kitsap Community Center. $2.5 million of it is outlined in our scope to funds tasks 1 through 4. After the completion of the step 4, the PFD could provide the cash flow as we discussed for the equivalent of the 9.5. The last installment of 9.5 would only be provided after we have raised all of the remaining funding to complete the project. I respectfully request that you make a commitment to the South Kitsap Community Center as outlined in our scope of work, with the understanding that your commitment is conditional upon our ability to perform over the next few years. It is unlikely we will ever have an opportunity of this magnitude come to our community again. I ask you to act now in support of the top-ranked project with the resources allocated to you by the state, the county commissioners, and the taxpayers who have yet to see a project in South Kitsap. So in closing, any questions of me or of the outline that I've provided you guys in your packet? Available for questions.
Earlier, Mayor, you mentioned that you had about $1 million in real estate acquisition requirements as part of the project.
We're estimating that.
Is some of that port land?
It could be, or some of that could be. So, I mean, what I foresee, we have 3 public partners that have pledged support to this. What I'm asking for, and we haven't, and that's since task 1, is determine who the owners of this are. Right now, I'm pledging our staff time and staff resources to this. You know, we have to go through a public process, and it'll be a significant contribution of our staff time. It's likely, I could see the city moving forward the Parks and Recs levy to fund the maintenance and operation and possibly some of the funding for this. But you have to go through a public process to get the voters to approve that in your community. I see the county having a role in this. What that is, maybe it's bond financing, maybe it's not. Maybe that, you know, we don't know yet. And the port as a partner, I'm asking that they contribute that piece of property, but there is another parcel of land. I'm trying not to be too, as we say in this, it's estimated, because I don't want to tell anybody in a public meeting what we're offering for a piece of property. So, you know, we're going to need to have it appraised, and, you know, that's a step that's more than a year away. And
have you had any kind of response from the port regarding their willingness to contribute?
Larry and I have had some dialogue, and Larry's not going to be the port commissioner for that district in January. We have a little bit of a difference in opinion on that. You know, he thinks they need to be compensated for it. I mean, we have an event center that benefits their marina, and we'll work through that process. I'm confident of it.
Actually, I'm not even sure it's legal for the port to give away property. They probably can't.
You can't gift public funds, you're right, but if they would need to receive benefit, and I think there's ways other than cash to receive benefit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll move now to 6B, status and discussion of project ILAs. Mike, would you speak to this?
Yeah, on the status of the ILAs, our attorney Brian has completed all of the draft ILAs individualized for each of the three top projects. So Mayor Patansu has addressed the fact that they have their copy and they're working through that. Mayor Erickson has acknowledged that they have their copy and their attorneys and their staff is looking at it. I'm sure that's the case for the Heritage Park project as well. So that process is underway. It is going to take a while to go through that, where they respond to us with whatever issues or additions or considerations that they want to have in any legal agreement that is formed between the PFD and the public partners. If we agree to continue forward and explore these, there will probably have to be, and I'll address that in the feasibility studies part of it, a working committee between the public partner, us, any other third-party partners that may be participating in the project, whether that includes Kitsap Bank for Port Orchard and other possible partners. So again, as we'd stated before, this is going to be an iterative process. We start with a template, we modify that, we get input, we continue to mold that over time to something that both the public partners and us will be able to sign and to go forward. Again, if we sign an ILA agreement like that, that does not necessarily make any funding commitment until we work through all of the steps in a feasibility study or that process, which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
All right, any questions for Mike on that part of the agenda? All right, let's move on to 6C, discussion of feasibility study requirements. Mike,
Yeah.
again.
Each of you has in your packet and I'll put this upside down on the, and this is what I'm talking about, and I provided to you in your packets. You've not seen these before tonight, did not have that prepared by the end of last week. But it defines the kind of thing that, in the process that we're going through, most everybody's gone through their needs assessment in this process in identifying the project that they're submitting to us and has gone through our vetting process. The feasibility study is where the rubber meets the road. Now we're going to start looking at the facts of what can be done, which partner is going to provide what part of it, and particularly the economic benefit that's going to be derived from any of these projects. And that may be true for any of the 7 projects, because as we go through this process, some may say, okay, we can't do this right now. We need another 2 years to study and refine what we can do, and we may be able to ask for money later, but maybe not now. But we have to go through that kind of study, and I think it's preferred to do through a third-party consultant that has an independent look at all of the details. And in the second page, there's more detail. That doesn't show up too well on the overhead screen. But the The phase one, which is the needs assessment, that's what we've gone through in the projects, putting their proposals forward, all their preparation to determine the initial requirements. And the decision part of that is what we've done in our ranking in order to determine which are the preferred projects. So we're at phase two. So what we need to look at is a market analysis that says what this project claims is going to be the benefits derived and to monetize that in some way. Mayor Patansu has covered the steps at the intermediate point, the draft management plan and the concept plan, and he's identified that there are components in his project that may not be part of what we will fund initially. There's other steps that need to go on for other parts of his plan. The financial viability and the risk assessment is part of that feasibility study that would be performed, or either that's done by the project or it may be done by us. If we want to have some control over that process, we may want to contract for that feasibility study so that the results of that are PFD work product that we have control over. It may be negotiated through the ILA discussions that the project may want to do their own feasibility study so that they have control over the results that they're going to include in their final project plans. But as it indicates at the decision point, what that feasibility study will be to give us the information where we can make the decision that we implement that project plan, that it's altered in some way in the way that Mayor Patansu has identified that they are already beginning to parcel that differently because of other limitations, that they can't all be rolled into one piece, or the other alternatives that they back off, or a project backs off, or the project is abandoned or postponed until the future. So the feasibility study will give us more information to be able to begin to formulate that final stage where we can say, we're going to commit money. We want to continue to work with you, but this needs to be changed so that we can consider funding later, or this isn't going to work in its current form. You need to go back to the drawing board and come back to see us later. So that is what I'm proposing that we consider, that you consider as the board, of taking that approach, that plan. We follow this kind of step process, and your decision as to whether or not we do that entirely on our own and contract with the consultants to do those feasibility studies, or we work with the projects to determine who's going to do them and who's going to pay for them, who's going to control the results, etc. So try to give you enough information to be able to make a decision about what you want to do with feasibility studies.
Mike, as part of your proposal here, what are you looking from the board for exactly? Do you want a decision tonight on how we're going to do feasibility study? Do you want discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to stimulate that discussion, that you guys can talk about this amongst yourselves and decide, you know, are you in consensus that this step process should be used? And you're in consensus that you should pay for it, or, but It's your decision. I'm trying to present you with the information that you can decide with.
Let's have a discussion about that, and then I'd like to have a discussion about the requests that we heard from Mayor Batansu too, as they've come, and to have Tony George here as well, and I believe Mr. Larson has left, but to be able to have you be able to hear, our discussion and comments, I'd like to begin that discussion. But I felt putting a request before we even talk about the ILAs or our feasibility studies is somewhat putting the cart before the horse. I understand the urgency for getting things done. I also want to do the process for everybody in an equitable way. But for feasibility studies, let's talk about that first, and then we'll go back to the Port Orchard Event Center. Any thoughts on what Mike presented?
Yeah, I have a question, Mike.
Yep.
As I understand, we have a three-phase process that the board in 2017 accepted by consensus, a process for projects to be considered by the PFD. How does what you're suggesting today fit with that process?
Yeah, well, it does, and that three-step process covered when someone may come to us with a concept on which they wanted us to consider. And basically, that's been done with all 7 of the projects. One had started before the others and was farther along in its development stage. And the other 6 had submitted concepts to us in December, more fleshed out plans in the first quarter, first and early second quarter, with their presentation of their projects in more detail. And we've taken those 3 projects to stage 2 of that process. We've reviewed their plans, they've submitted, we've examined them, we have preferences in our selection process, and in stage 2, we continue the plan, and this is where I see this feasibility planning is to help develop that stage 2 process or project to the point where it reaches stage 3, where we can commit funding and begin the bonding process in order to provide funding and have that available for eventually for construction. So I see those 3 projects in stage 2, and that the feasibility study is one of the things that will give us more information as to whether or not it continues to the end of stage 2 and ready for funding and construction.
So your answer is that this fits in that 3-phase?
Correct.
Because we've had one project in going through that process, and it seems to me that we ought to be consistent in what we ask the projects to do.
Yes.
So this would make it, you're telling us that this would be consistent with what we've already done.
Yes, because the Circuit of the Northwest that came to us in a more advanced stage of development, we still asked them to go through a feasibility study that would give us more information about the community benefits that could be derived from an alteration of their business plan. They came to us with a complete, entire business plan and funding plan for what their initial business plan was. They altered that business plan to include public benefits by including public amenities and public facilities constructed to serve that component. So they were already in stage 2 and ready for stage 3. In effect, they kind of backed up a little bit to add the public component. But We've gone through the application of that same three-step process with both Circuit of the Northwest in an advanced stage and used it for the new projects in their development phase.
So we'd have 4 projects that we take through phase 2, is what I'm looking at. The 3 that that we're doing the ILAs on right now, and Circuit of the Northwest that's pretty much already in phase 2. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Any other questions for Mike?
So Mike, can you recap any asks that we've seen in the paperwork? I don't have it laid out in front of me for feasibility studies and dollar amounts from the 3 projects that we don't currently have the ILA with.
Yeah, just a minute. Let me get the appropriate piece of paper here. The Port Gamble Heritage Park was asking $348,000 for a master plan, which would have included the feasibility study. But that was a much broader set of components in it. I think it needs to be defined down to what really is the master plan and what is it, not master plan, what is the feasibility study and what is it going to tell us. As Mayor Patansu had mentioned, he was looking for what was that number, 440,000 or?
I believe it's 400,000 as
Yeah.
the original.
But that also includes the plans and drawings, which is the second phase that we funded for Circuit of the Northwest. So we did a $60,000 feasibility study that was followed on by the request to do the preliminary designs and architectural plans to define what the actual construction and cost was going to be. The city of Poulsbo for the event center had said they needed $290,000 for a market study. I'd have to go back and see what else was included in that because that seems high for a market or feasibility study. The Port Orchard project hadn't defined an economic impact study cost, but they have given it to us tonight. But as I said, that includes some other information that I don't think we need to fund initially in a feasibility study. As you'd stated, Darren, they are looking for a larger commitment, not just for a feasibility study, but they're looking for a commitment that we're going to follow through on funding whatever we find unless there is something that they discover or we discover together that says this is not feasible to go forward with. But I agree that there's going to be a significant impact to Port Orchard. There's going to be a significant impact to the region as a result of that. The question still is the event center, which is what we're concentrating our funding on, going to be financially viable and under what conditions? We toured the the event center similar to this in Kingston, and saw how a public and private partnership could manage that in an effective and economic manner. And if we can see that they're going to establish the same kind of conditions here, then I don't see any problem about going forward.
There are two issues as I see it. One is at our last meeting on advice from our council, we decided as a board that we were going to have the ILAs worked through and signed and agreed upon before we began to give money. Now we have a request for money before the ILAs are done. And so in a decision that we made 2 weeks ago, we're now being asked to switch that decision. What I am thinking, and just speaking as one member of the board, is that this is our number one project. This is the project that we are gonna give money to. I wanna give that kind of understanding from me personally as one member of the board. But how we go about this process-wise is, and our legal counsel is not here, but we've been given advice that we should do the ILAs first with all of our different projects that we're going to work with. We're doing that so that there is uniformity amongst all the projects. And so to decide against that, I think is a big choice for us, and our legal counsel isn't here. But at the same time, I want to give appreciation for what we've just heard and confidence that this is the number one project and what we want to do. Other board members speak to that, and then we'll. And we can enter into discussion during this. We can have any of you come back up and ask questions back and forth, because I want to be able to work together on it. But the second piece that we have talked about is the feasibility study. And there's one specific issue with the feasibility study of whether we are the ones who purchase that and then therefore identify who's going to do that feasibility study, or whether we have the project be the one to identify who they want to do the feasibility study. And that's another piece that is contained in this as well. But other board members, would you speak to my comments and what your own thoughts are as well?
Well, I'm sort of a skeptic when it comes to funding feasibility studies. You know, in my experience, the person who pays for the feasibility study generally gets the answer that he wants to hear. So with that in mind, I think it's preferable for us to fund the feasibility studies in cooperation with the public partners in each of the three projects concerning the scope of the project, the schedule of the feasibility study, what we want to see as the final product. I think that's preferable than us giving, you know, Port Orchard $400,000 and the Heritage Park $238,000 and let them do the feasibility study. I think we're more likely to get an unbiased report if we hire the consultant to do those three studies, and there may be some economies of scale by advertising if there's a qualified consultant out there that can do two or all three of the studies. We might get a better price than we'd get by giving hunks of money out to the jurisdictions and letting them do it. So that's my feeling on how we should proceed on the feasibility studies. As far as the mayor's discussion, you know, I'm not prepared to commit tonight to $9.5 million for the Port Orchard project. It is our number one project, and it's going to get some funding, but I don't know that it'll get all of the funding, and I'm not exactly sure when it would be. I'm done.
Yeah. You want to go? I'll let you go first.
Go ahead.
I lean on the same side. I'd like to see the ILAs get pushed through and be consistent on this. We can't be that far off on it to get those done. I would also like to see a real dollar amount per feasibility study. I mean, we're looking at, I think we paid $60,000 for Circuit of the Northwest. So, you know, when we're kicking around the $400,000 numbers, we know we're not looking apples to apples here. So, you know, I'd like to know how much it would actually cost to do a feasibility study per each one of these, which may be reaching out to one consultant up front and saying, we're looking for feasibility studies on these. I agree with you, Walt, that we pay it, we own it, we direct it. You know, if we say, I don't want fluff, I want real numbers, I want economic return numbers, you know, give us what we're looking for, then that's how the response on the report should come to us. And then the other part of this, too, is, are we running this concurrent with our how much money do we have question? I mean, it's almost cart and horse part again. You know, we have 4 projects that we're looking at that we'll have ILAs from. You know, whether they all come to fruition or not, we don't know at this point. But we certainly still need to be pushing forward on the budgeting part. I mean, on the bonding part. So I just want to make sure that's moving forward as at least as quickly as paying for feasibility studies.
Yeah, I agree with Walt also that we should do the feasibility studies and own them ourselves. And I agree all the reasons why, and the additional one is we don't have to wait for any ILAs then. We can start that right away, not worry about anybody else, and get these done sooner, and I think probably more efficiently too. So I agree with that. Do them ourselves and start them as soon as we can.
So, it's kind of comments that I made before that this whole issue of government time as opposed to the reality of what may be happening out in the private sector. So it seems to me there's got to be a way that we can give the assurance to the city of Port Orchard and to the bank on how this project will fit in terms of our decisions that come down the path. And I don't know how to really do that. I know you've said that you're committed and I'm committed. It is the #1 project, and you know, I have some questions about whether or not these numbers will work that are presented to us, but how do we give Port Orchard the assurance that we plan on moving forward, given the proposal that the mayor's given us? So I agree that we need the feasibility studies done, and I think we should do those. And I think we can get the economies of scale by having the 3 projects accomplished. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can give the assurance to Port Orchard so they can move forward.
I'd like to invite Mayor Botansu and Mr. George to come forward if there is any way that we can do just that, to give you assurances, and at the same time, you've heard the discussion of what we're thinking as well.
And we looked at the ILA, and one of the probably the biggest red flag we had was there was a 30-day cancellation provision on your guys' side, and we're like, wait a minute, if we enter into an agreement for all these tasks and we've signed contracts, so whether you're engaging that contract, that takes that concern in that phase of it. So that's probably the biggest concern we had in the ILA, and we can get it back fairly shortly. It was our intent that we would, and whether it's, you know, I've got 5 tasks, and if you've got 3 up there and those 3 fit within I mean, we could have 10 tasks on this thing, and I'm fine with, I think we need that level of detail for this process. And so we could get this ILA back to you fairly quickly, but my intent was to incorporate our tasks and deliverables with that ILA. And if that's not your intent, you just want the ILA, I want to tell you, enter into that ILA with, here's what we're going to do for you guys and what we're going to deliver for you. And then, my concern is for the bank here, if we only fund what I'm calling task one, which is your 3 tasks, and I've got more in my task one than your 3 tasks. That's taking 9 to 12 months, and the bank's got to make decisions before that, and that's my fear. And I will not just. Kitsap County could lose 150 jobs, and I could lose 50 jobs in my downtown, and they're by far our largest employer downtown.
Yeah, feel free to stay at the mic too, and if we want to continue to go back and forth. So I think there is a spirit amongst the board that says this is our number one project. This is the project that we're going to do first. But at the same time, to have to commit all of the money right now in order for the bank to be able to know goes against our whole process of how we're going through this.
What I'm envisioning is an ILA and the scope with the tasks and deliverables. And if any point, like I said, if it's 5 or 10 tasks in this, there's a commitment, and provided you agree, we agree, and everybody involved in agree, we move on to the next task. I don't know what beyond a commitment that we're going to get to an end game. I know if I was the bank and the only commitment I had was for a study, electeds come and go. I know I'm going to be elected in November again for another term, and I'm fully behind this project. Our community, I need to get our community behind it. Our council's committed to this. But I think we need a contract between everybody to get, we know we're going to move forward if it makes sense. And the study says that it makes sense and it has the economic impacts.
So, Mayor, let me make a suggestion and to the board. One of our problems right now is we really haven't made a decision on a major financing decision, which is how are we going to proceed with financing these projects? Are we going to issue the bonds ourselves? Mm-hmm. We've asked the commissioners to assist us. They have not answered our request yet. And then the third one, as you heard tonight, is if we don't issue bonds and we ask the projects to do that, what kind of revenue is available? So we've not made that decision yet. We're waiting to hear from the county commissioners, and at that time, then we'll probably have a discussion and decide with some help from our financial consultant how we're going to proceed. But it ranges, and this is my own estimate, it ranges anywhere from a low of $14–15 million up to, as you heard tonight, for nearly $48 million if we work with the projects. So that's a major decision that we have to make, and we're not prepared to do that yet. We don't have all the information. So could I suggest that you, in the process of developing the ILA, you do your due diligence, you put in there what you want to see happen. That can go to our attorney, and we can take a look at it, and if we can come to some kind of an agreement in the ILA, then you would have your answer.
I think we all can acknowledge that from a cash flow standpoint, if you're doling out the cash flow, there's much more to be had by everyone. And I think I spoke to it earlier tonight that's we're likely agreeable to that, but we've got to get to task 5 in my document to know whether or not we're going to pass that threshold, I guess, or take that next step.
So I would suggest you do your due diligence in your side of the ILA, okay. And
so are you comfortable with and if Mike wants this broken down farther, are you comfortable? And that's what I was alluding to, and I guess I didn't do a very good job, is we like to incorporate these tasks and deliverables as, whether it's an exhibit or internally within the ILA. That's what we would like to present to you, and we don't want to, I guess, shock you with that, as what is.
Can I make a
Yeah,
comment?
that's
Yeah, please
typically
do.
done, that's
My
typically,
preference would be for an exhibit. We have an interest in making our ILAs as consistent as possible with the various public partners. And, you know, Poulsbo's going to have some requirements, the Heritage Park's going to have some requirements. And I think if we do it as a attachment or an exhibit or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, so that the body, the guts of the ILA are as internally consistent among our projects as we can make them.
Certainly, and I've seen this document, so if we need to further, if task one is three tasks now, and it's this 400,000's broken into smaller bites, we're fine with that. We're looking, however we need to go about this, but we need a commitment for the end game. And if at some point at any one of these tasks it isn't feasible, we determine, then we all know that it doesn't move forward.
yeah, I wanted to comment.
Any other
that-
comment from the board? No, Mike?
Sure. I wanted to comment that Mayor Patansu had mentioned in his original proposition that the process that he was going to go through was a contingency on whether or not all of the pieces fall into place and all of the boxes get ticked, then it can go forward. If it doesn't, then that's the contingent factor. In the same way that the PFD can put a contingency in any commitment that they make, as we had set aside or identified funds that could go to Kitsap County for a future project at the fairgrounds. We've earmarked that money, if you will, if that project goes through. If it doesn't, then that money doesn't get spent. In the same way that we might be able to do that for this. And every ILA we have practically has an addendum or an exhibit which defines what the tasks and responsibilities are for various pieces of the process. So we'll wind up with more than one ILA. We'll wind up with several different attachments or exhibits attached to those ILAs, which define first the agreement to do business together. There will be a financing ILA, which will define exactly what our commitment is and any other partners in that's going to go into the eventual project. So again, it's going to be an iterative process, but it's the will of the board. If you want to say we're willing to say that we'll go up to X dollars at some point in the future, contingent on all of the steps going through. All that is an earmark at this point until the process completes itself. That's up to the board.
It would seem to me that from the discussion we've heard is that we just need to move forward on the ILA as quickly as possible. The information that we were given at our last meeting was that the last one that we entered into with the Circuit of the Northwest took up to 3 or 4 months. And so that is the timeline that has been in our head. But we would like to have that happen just as soon as you would like to have that happen. So we do not want to delay at all.
I'd like to say I'd have it for you tomorrow, but I won't. I have to have a city council meeting, and I have 7 bosses that I answer to. So our next council meeting won't happen before your next board meeting. So it's my goal. 1 month from today, I will have you've given me my homework, and I'll get it done.
Excellent. I think you heard here the spirit of the board is to, across the board, you heard that the feasibility study would be something that we would work with. So that would be part of a potential change there. Are there any other questions that you'd like to ask?
No, and if I'll get with Mike and get the document make sure that our tasks are broken down in that manner, and that you'll guys, and we'll modify this to that you'll control the feasibility study, and no problem with that at all.
Any other comment from the board? Mr. George, is there any question that you'd like to ask us?
Oh, yeah, no, we understand.
And that is a decision that hasn't been answered to the fullness of what you're saying. We have not decided. Project 1 will get the first 14 million. Project 2 will get what's left after that. That has not been a decision of the board. And I would hesitate to ask the board to speak to that tonight when 5 of the 7 are here. But I think to give assurances of what you heard, that this is the number 1 project, and that's how we see it.
And just so you're not surprised, I intend to attach, a modified version of what you saw here tonight with additional tasks in it as part of our ILA. So
Yep.
I will get it done. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the board on that topic at all?
I do have it's kind of going back to the dollar amounts put together by Northwest Municipal Advisors. Mike, they put this in at a 3% revenue increase and a 1% increase to expenses. And I'd love to see these numbers with a little more conservative on it. Can we just request that? It looks like it's just a simple sheet that they could go in. So what are we thinking? Are we going to look at 2 and 2?
I agree. 2 and 2 I'd like to see. That seems more conservative.
I think when we met with the county commissioners, one of them said that their sales tax revenue projections, they were using 2%, and attempting to be conservative, so probably we should use the same.
Okay, all right. So 2% for revenue and 2% for expenses then, too.
Yeah, the numbers that we calculate on our sheet at 1.5% is a little lower than that at around 45, but can be as low as 38. But we can have.
We'll reach out to Alan and
Yeah.
ask him to give us the numbers.
Yeah.
And just redo this one with this. Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to number 7A, our new business for our meeting schedule for the balance of 2019. At our last meeting, with an understanding that the ILAs were going to take as long as we were told, it seemed that putting more meetings on our agenda was not a wise move. We have a meeting scheduled right now, our next meeting for September 9th, but we've heard from Mayor Patansu that they have to meet before that. It would be my thought to cancel that meeting. That is an additional meeting that we had added earlier. We would then also have meetings still left in October and then one in December. But at that September meeting, if the ILAs have made greater progress than what we've expected, we can add more meetings to our schedule at that time. So I'd rather wait to see what kind of traction and momentum we get going, and then add meetings to facilitate that rather than doing so in advance. So that would mean canceling our September 9th meeting and fulfilling our meetings that we've publicized as September 23rd, October 28th, and December 9th. Does that seem like a good decision to the board, or I invite discussion for that?
I concur.
So is this resolution for 2019 that we're proposing?
No, we are not proposing that resolution. That was a resolution, number 3 and number 4 were resolutions that were put forward. There's no resolution that we're proposing right now. What I was proposing is to say, let's wait until the ILAs have been presented to us or we've seen momentum on those before we add dates. It takes 1 week for us to add it to the public calendar. And so at our September 23rd meeting, we could then add October dates and November dates if that would be helpful to the different projects.
Right now, what are our dates in October, November, and December?
Currently, our dates for meetings are September 9th, September 23rd, October 28th, and December 9th.
When was October 28th?
October 28th, yes.
And we skipped November.
Yeah, historically, we have, instead of having one right on that Thanksgiving week, we have, and then Christmas, the same situation for the December meeting. We put one in the middle.
I get you.
And so that is the rationale behind that.
So the December one ought to be then earlier in December.
December 9th. Yep.
All right, so we just need a motion
To cancel
tonight
the
to
September
cancel
9th
the
meeting.
September 9th.
Yeah.
Okay, I move cancellation of the September 9th scheduled meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right. Our next meeting then will be.
Excuse me, who was the second? I didn't catch that.
Bill.
Bill? Okay, thanks.
Our next meeting will then be on September 23rd at the council chambers at the Norm Dix Governmental Center in Bremerton. So that will be our next meeting. And Mike, you will notify them for our September 9th meeting?
Yes, I will.
All right.
Were we already scheduled for the 23rd at Norm Dix, or are we going to have to check for availability?
No, both the September 9th and the September 23rd dates had been confirmed earlier.
All right. Any other business? With that, our meeting is adjourned.